we look to others to be validated in our choices. And so if everyone else is doing this particular thing and we go in a different direction, that can feel really uncomfortable because there is maybe no overt model that we're imitating.
Quick! Is anyone here a doctor? Yes, her name is Dr. Emily, and she's a psychologist. Please welcome to the Imperfects, our very own psychologist!
I'm about to sneeze, sorry.
Okay. Wow, knows how to open a show, that's for sure.
Sorry.
Are you going to be okay?
I don't know.
Can we explain what's happening at the moment? So you've just had lunch.
Okay. Yep.
And there is currently a grain of rice stuck
somewhere
in your head. And as you just told us, you no longer have access to it.
I choked at lunch and then breathed up and rice went into... People will know this experience, maybe.
Yeah, of
like
course.
food goes up your nose.
Into the nasal passage.
Yeah, and it's been toing and froing between mouth passage and nose passage.
Yeah, and somewhere in there. It's lost.
Yeah, and as Bridge and I we were walking back from lunch, I did the most awful thing. I tried to get it out of my nose in front of Bridge, which
Okay, yeah.
I'm thinking it's damaged our relationship.
Like a late 80s footy player on the
Exactly
field.
like that. And just as we were talking, I just like mid-sentence got some of it, but yeah, as I said, just put it in the mic. So I went to the bathroom to try and really get rid of it all. It turns out I no longer have access to it because it's not coming out my nose or mouth, but I can feel it in my head somewhere.
I thought maybe it was like phantom rice. Like, you know,
yeah.
like you've gotten rid of it, but the imprint of where it was is still there.
Oh, so it's more of a, it's
Like a phantom limb.
Like a phantom limb, but it's phantom rice.
I can feel something's in my head.
That's the phantom.
Yeah, but the rice was never there. I think it's moved to there now.
Oh, okay. That's a different situation.
Can you see a time in the future where the rice will be gone, or is this you now?
Always
About to sneeze.
I just picture myself lying down one day on my side and it just drops out my ear. That's where it is now. It's too high for my nose and mouth to get access to. But anyway.
All right, we'll see how you go during this episode. Yeah, but if you need a moment, actually you won't even ask. You'll just like blow it out, won't you?
Bridget, I am so sorry for doing that to you. You do not deserve that.
Quite
They
extreme.
are awful working conditions.
Yeah, to say the least.
And if we had an HR department, I'd expect you to report me for being fucking disgusting.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Here we are.
Dr. Emily.
Thank you.
Psychologist. Great to have you back.
It's great to be here.
So good to see you.
Great.
Sorry about Hugh. He just no longer has access to decency and the grain of rice.
Oh, no, it is great to be here, even with the rice present in the room.
I feel like it would be wise of us to just move past this as
let's
much
go.
as possible. Dr. M, are you well? Are you good?
I'm great. Yeah, really good.
Do you like being back in Melbourne? Because you grew up in Melbourne.
I did.
I very much think you're a Melbourne person. You now
Yep.
live in Perth, though. Have done for how long now? A while.
No, like 13 years, I think.
Whoa.
13?
I didn't know
About
that
that,
long.
yeah. Yeah.
Do you still consider yourself a
I
Melbourne?
do.
Yeah.
It's funny. It feels like it's in my heart. Like it's like a Melburnian forever.
Yeah.
But I still, obviously I love Perth.
You just love the
but I think
horizontal
I'll-
drizzle and
Yes.
And the street art.
Yeah.
You must miss the street art and the
Yeah.
laneways of Melbourne.
Yep.
The lattes.
The cafe culture.
And the cafe culture you must miss. The exposed brick walls.
everyone
All of
wearing
those
black
things.
clothes all the time.
Yep. And I'm wearing white.
Yes.
Yep, today.
Yeah,
Yep.
of course.
Yeah.
A true Western Australian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, enough small talk. What are we talking about today?
I wanted to talk about a concept that I've actually kind of come across quite recently, but it really struck a chord with me, and it's called Mimetic Desire. And obviously I'm going to explain this in a lot more depth. But
I think most people probably know what it is, but maybe give it a little bit more info.
But I wonder actually if we might even start by referring back to Bronte's episode.
Bronte Campbell.
Yep.
Great.
Because, obviously as she made mention, really at the very beginning of her tea house is that it was an episode really around comparison and how we also conceive of what it is that we want and what our desires are. And so I've got an excerpt, Josh, that you can play in a second that really is kind of highlighting, perhaps the origins of our desires and how this can change over time. And then I'll lead to kind of a discussion around what this particular concept is.
When someone has blazed a path that is so successful, in any respect, and they're your sibling, I guess for me, I'm like, well, I just want to be like that because that's successful. And it's kind of scary when you realize the moment of like, well, I'm not that successful, but I'm also not that person either. And that kind of like stepping off into discovering who you are. And it sounds a bit strange to say it like that because it's not like I made a conscious decision to do that. I just found myself with no other option.
What do you mean?
Well, in sort of learning to be who you are, as opposed to trying to be like someone else, the person I'm sitting next to, I'm not sure. I think it's easy to talk about it in hindsight and say it was I started to move away from that and decide. But I find it to be a lot more tumultuous and scary and you don't know where you're going and you don't know who you are. You don't know what you're finding. So it's easy to make it sound like a linear story when you're talking about it in hindsight. But at the time, you just feel lost.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're very right. And the image that comes to mind when you're talking about that is, you ever been like jungle bashing?
Yeah, I have actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hugh's walking in front, or Kate's walking in front, and they're clearing the path. And then at some point you're like, I'm going to start making my own path.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is just a jungle now. Like I don't know where I'm going all.
You say Kate's a deep thinker. I think you are. That is a really good analogy.
It is a great analogy, isn't
I'm
it?
so glad that was the bit because that analogy has really stuck with me.
Worth revisiting. And just to be clear, which Bronte kind of mentioned that in the clip, but when you were talking, Josh, you were talking about Hugh. Just to be super clear. Yep.
So I wanted to kind of highlight there this idea around who we follow as, I guess, a mediator of our, what I'd say is desire. And so this really leads back to this particular concept called mimetic desire. So just to kind of break down the first word, first of all, mimesis comes from the Greek word imitation, or from the English root to mimic. And it's based on this concept that we conceive of our desires not based on instinct, but on a model of another.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want is informed by what we see others wanting or valuing.
It's informed by what we think others want. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So if you imagine that we might conceive of what we're interested in, of what we seek, of what like career path, of what clothes we like, we might believe that all those things that we want come entirely and truly from us, like some organic kind of biological instinct. I want those things because that's what my gut says. But actually what this concept says, and it makes a huge amount of sense, is that what we want is actually informed by what we see other people wanting.
Based on what we've seen, based on seeing other things succeeding. Is that a little bit or no?
Yes and no.
I'm getting it wrong.
Yep.
Damn it. Okay, I'm just sort of trying to twist it into my own story, but yes.
So it, like in essence, what we are valuing, we value it because other people value it also.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay.
And we're not thinking for ourselves, basically.
Yeah. And I think that feels like a really undermining thought, really, is that we're not kind of these independent agents of interest, I suppose. And so, for example, we can see biological needs as being instinctual. So the needs around thirst and hunger, shelter, those sorts of things, they are biologically driven instinctual needs that we need to meet, right? But our choice of clothing, our choice of where we live, our choice of career, our choice of even what we're eating is not instinctual.
Yep.
Can I give you two examples? Okay, so the first two that spring to mind, tell me if this is a good example or not. Someone going to uni to study, I don't know, I'm picking something hypothetically, to study medicine because their parents would like them to be doctors.
Yes.
And all life, and they've sort of got the message, well, it'd be great if you're a doctor, or be so proud if you're a doctor one day. So that's what they pursue that.
Yep.
And another one is me in my mid-20s going to the gym purely to look like an AFL footballer.
That is exactly it. Yep.
Yeah. There was nothing functional about it at all.
Yep. And was it Chris Judd?
Well,
I'm fairly certain I have a memory of you saying that.
Really? To look exactly like Chris Judd.
Did you have a poster? Maybe?
no, I don't
No.
Have a poster of Chris Judd. His physique was, yes, definitely him. One of them. There's many that I could.
He said that like it was a maybe. Yeah,
No, there's
definitely him.
So, okay, yeah, so Chris Judd.
No, I just go to the gym heaps in my mid-20s, like Josh would. And now I go to the gym to run faster. Everything's about running faster. Then it was like just to look like an AFL football does, because that's what looks good.
Yes.
So I need to just look like that.
Yep. So that need and desire has been informed by a model. And the model can be a person, like obviously in that instance, that is a person. So you're wanting to be like that person because they have modeled to you that that's something desirable.
Yeah.
But a model can also be like an institution. So like a particular university or a particular workplace, for example. A model can be a group of people. It could be a mentor. It could be someone that you admire. Most prolifically at the moment, we see social media as models of desire. So this concept was originally kind of discovered by a French historian called René Girard in the 1950s. And I might just read a quote for you if that's okay, because I feel like that kind of exemplifies a little bit more. And I'm going to apologise in advance because he's using really gendered language here, but just keep in mind that this was in the 1950s. So he says, man is the creature who does not know what to desire, and he turns to others in order to make up his mind. We desire what others desire because we imitate their desires.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I couldn't agree more with that quote. Here.
You misogynist?
Sorry, I could agree a little bit differently, but yeah. Great.
This is probably, maybe this is where you're going but the first thing that comes to mind for me is then it seems to so obviously speak to that thing of when you get what you thought you desired and then feel empty.
Yeah. I mean, that's so interesting because the concept of desire is that we're lacking. So when we desire something, it's because there is a scarcity or a lacking of that particular thing or person or experience. And then when we get that particular thing, then if we're not careful, that moves into then like we'll just move on to the next thing. So much like, speaking about the hedonistic treadmill, if we're not staying with the experience of pleasure in obtaining the desirable thing, then it's just gone. We just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Does that kind of speak to what you're saying?
Yeah. But also questioning absolutely that, but also I think about like working at something for a long time, achieving it, and then it not fulfilling in the way that you thought it would and going, well, did I actually really want this in the first place?
Yeah, that is really key. And I think that's what we really want to get to is checking in with who the models of desire are and why we are influenced by those particular models.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to come back to that if you don't mind, because that's really important.
Yeah. Awesome.
But we can see how mimetic desire starts, really early on in childhood. And a really very simple example is seeing kids play with, and there's one desirable toy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I just got a personal example here. We have at home, a particular plate that is like hot property between the two kids.
Yeah.
And Ryan, would you please know it's a Melbourne Demon plate.
Very pleased to know.
But I can't bring it out because we only have one of them. And if I bring it out, there is full on war between my two children because it is the desirable plate.
And is there a reason you wouldn't buy a second one?
It was a gift. So
okay.
that would be a really appropriate thing to do is to buy two of them. But the thing is though that if we had to, I don't know if it would be as desirable.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when at some point in time, my eldest son really loved this plate. So he would have it and then my daughter was not aware of it. Okay. But as she's got older, she's become aware that he loves it.
Yeah.
So he's telling her, like he is acting as the model of desire for what she should want. So
Yep.
she should want this plate because her older brother wants it.
Of
Mm.
course.
Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, if he loses interest in it, effectively so does she.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just like, that's expanded out into fashion trends.
It explains, like, when you really unpack this explains so much
It does.
Yeah.
about what we're desiring and what we're wanting.
I was thinking fashion as well.
Mm.
Hmm.
Okay. So, and then in that, there's also the scarcity thing where there's,
Yes.
you know, it's like brands will only release a small amount of things because it's like, oh my God, well, there's only a small amount, so I'll want it because everyone's making a big fuss about it. Then they're gone. A few people have them. They maybe take photos of themselves with it, and everyone's like, oh, I would love to have that thing because all they have it, and I don't. And until I have it, I won't be happy.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. And I mean, we can see this in so many different instances. And I think actually a really kind of interesting example is how we value certain people too. So I'm just thinking, like, there are two kind of examples here. We've got what's called an external model of desire, and we've got an internal model of desire. So an external model of desire is someone that we want to imitate that is external to our world. So really kind of we're talking about like celebrities or people that are actually unknown personally to us.
Mhm.
They would be considered an external model. So
Like Chris Judd's body.
exactly. Yep. Kim Kardashian, like famous actors, whatever it might be, they model to us what it is that we want.
And can that be, other than like how they look or the things that they have, can that also be, like for me, I'm thinking of when I was younger and even now to a certain degree, comedians or actors who do a style of comedy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. This is like absolutely spot on. So it's not just based on materialistic experiences. It's based on interests and like pathways. So
Mm-hmm.
you get, for example, you get exposed to a certain type of comedy growing up,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes your model
Yes.
for how you relate to what you want as a comedian, for example.
That's the biggest resonating one for me, because so much of the reason why I was so reluctant to do this podcast in the first place was because it didn't match the pathway of the people who I admired growing up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, because like people that I loved, I've never heard them talk about mental health in like a considered way. So I was like, oh, I don't know, well, they didn't do it. So it'd be weird if I did that because I want to be like them.
Yeah.
Or I want to be respected like they're respected.
Yeah, and that's also really another key point in there is that we look to others to be validated in our choices. And so if everyone else is doing this particular thing and we go in a different direction, that can feel really uncomfortable because there is maybe no overt model that we're imitating.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and you're worried that those people might judge you for doing it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can see this in so many different areas, like even, introducing a new partner to your family or your friends. We seek their approval. And if people tell us that this is someone great, then we feel really validated in our choice.
Yeah.
But maybe you might be more reluctant to introduce someone that you're not sure about.
So this, I mean, that parent example, that you could say that about anything you do, like as far as our want to get our parents' approval on things we do, not only the partners we choose, but like everything I do, it just like even though I've known for a long time that the things that I really want to do aren't necessarily my mum and dad's, favorite type of comedy, and they'll often say it's like, oh, I don't think we're the audience for that, which is a very nice way of saying that's no good, according to them, which I'm much better with now. But earlier on, I was like, oh well, if they don't like it mustn't be good, or I don't know, like it just got to me a lot. And maybe that does come from that early when you're a kid, I guess you just want. But that's really.
And so they're your model of, the mediator of your desire, basically. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the same. I'm sorry, I just keep giving examples for myself, but in the same way that when I was making these videos, and this is going to sound like a really big brag, but it is contextual. But Tony Martin, who I just adore, like I know Tony, relatively well, and so know him, but also just respect him. This is Tony Martin, the comedian. Love everything he's ever done. And I would put him in the category of people who I was trying to I want his approval. And then when I was making a bunch of videos a couple of years ago, he like tweeted how much he was enjoying the videos I was making. And that was like the biggest home run I could ever imagine. Like
Mimetically speaking.
Mimetically speaking, of course. God, can't wait to drop that into conversation one day. Mimetically speaking.
Oh, that's absolutely spot on.
I mean, I wonder how many people's choice of partner is mimetically speaking.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's to fit into a social group or the desires of your parents of what they think a good partner would be. I wonder how many people have made a relationship choice off that.
I feel like I did when I was young, especially in teenage years. I feel like I ended relationships because I was like, this is not the kind of partner I should have.
Oh, once in year 7, I asked a girl out and she said yes, and then I told everyone, and everyone was like, "What? Really?" And I went, "Oh, no." And I went into the relationship straight away.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Relationship.
So you're
Sound like it would have been a tough one to a deep relationship.
So your models of desire there being your friendship group told you not to want that, basically. But we can also see this too in Bronte's story. And I think, in earlier on in her episode, she talks about seeing Grant Hackett win at the Olympics. And so that then almost like this is like the burgeoning of this interest, this desire. I want to be like this, or I value this because that's valuable. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in my early 20s, I think it would have been, I remember feeling panicked by this idea of, in getting older, I was running out of people to look up to copy their desires. So I can think I won't mention them because they're people I know, but I remember getting to a point where like meeting a new person who I hadn't met before that I was just blown away and had this idea of them being perfect and that they were, for whatever reason, many different reasons in different cases, and thinking, oh, that's who I want to be like. And I want to, and so
you're constantly looking for someone
else to model myself on to be like them. And then I remember it was a strange feeling of panic as I was getting older of going, kind of running out of meeting people like this. And I'm like, how do I do this on my own without someone to copy? And then it kind of it disappeared, and I've realised that, I mean, maybe you're going to tell us that there's no such thing as our own desires, but that feeling of panic went away. But I remember finding it to be a confusing and strange thing at the time. Yeah,
I would, because I've done that, and I still do that. I think trying to find people who, because it's sort of nice to have, like, I like a model that I can follow. Like it kind of helps. But I'm the last person around this table who should be saying this, but I imagine I would definitely do that more than any time in my life if I had a kid. I would be trying to find parents who'd be like, oh, the way they're doing it is great. I'm going to try and apply that type of parenting and the way the activities they do, or the way they talk. And like, I can imagine myself trying to desperately find someone on YouTube or someone who's like doing it in a way that I like, and then try and emulate it.
That's Bandit from Blue.
Oh yeah,
that's Bandit. Yeah.
Wow, because I've had the kind of the opposite in that I felt like that before having kids.
I would agree with that.
But as soon as I had kids, I was like, there's no point copying anyone else because the only thing that applies here is what's unique to my kids.
I totally agree.
It was pretty crystal clear straight away. But before, in the lead up to having kids, and like while Sophie's pregnant for the first time, I was like exactly that.
I guess it's in the abstract,
but once you've got
I'm just wondering how much of our life, what percentage of our life is based off mimetic desire. I feel like an embarrassing amount.
Like according to this theory, that if we go beyond our basic needs, that there is always going to have been some model of desire that that imitation is in some ways inescapable.
That really panics me so much.
Wow, I had the opposite reaction.
No. One of my great fears is to be predictable and unoriginal.
Yes, I can tell.
I can understand that.
Yeah, I've always thought that, and because I remember when I used to do radio, one of the things that they say in radio shows is like there's no new ideas. Probably in TV and a lot of in industries as well. But I remember trying to come up with new ways of doing a radio show, and then I'd always be told, "Look, there's no new ideas. everything's been done. And I remember thinking, nah, I'm going to find something that hasn't been done. And I don't know, who knows if I did, but that was
You definitely did.
my feeling was like, I want to do it differently. I don't want to do life like anyone else.
A perfect example the other day when you said when we were going over our live show, one of the sort of skits that we do, we were trying to shorten it a bit, and I said, why don't we take this bit out? And then straight away you went, no, if you take that bit out, that's just a joke that the footy show would make.
With all due respect to the footy show.
Oh, yeah, no, I was in, but it's like, sorry, I wasn't saying that.
Let's not start a beef with the footy show.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, yeah, true. I'll bring it back.
No, but as in, that wasn't a slight on the footy show. It's a joke that you would have heard on the footy show. So you don't want to do it because
it's you can see it. It's not unoriginal.
It's all of a sudden it's not original. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's that kind of famous speech that in Devil Wears Prada that Meryl Streep's character makes to Anne Hathaway's character, which Jam played me. I've seen the movie years ago, but I'd forgotten that bit where she essentially does this huge speech about how the fact that what Anne Hathaway is wearing, she thinks she doesn't care about fashion, but actually the choices that she thinks she doesn't care, but actually all of the choices that she unconsciously made were based on trends that were started like 4 years earlier that she's now just being given, and she's just like doing because everyone else does that.
Yeah, and that is a really good example, like how unconscious our choices and desires really are. And I don't mean at all to kind of minimize, the possibility of innovation and new ideas and all those sorts of things. Obviously, this is part of living. We're constantly evolving. But just kind of keeping in mind that there will always be models that are telling us what it is that we do value. Another kind of example and how this leads into comparison and rivalry is really interesting, I think. And that is, very simply, let's just say you're in a relationship with someone and you make the decision to end it, it's no longer working. And then a month later you see that this person is being desired by other people. What happens to your desire?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's just like, totally.
Yeah.
So basically seeing other people value that person undermines the belief in your choice that you made, because these people now tell you this is a desirable person. You should be wanting this person because this person is now valuable to me. So zooming out, there's another important part of this that I really kind of wanted to emphasize, which I mentioned or alluded to earlier, which is the concept of an internal model of desire. So as we know, like the external is someone that's really external in the external world to us. An internal model is someone that is inside our world. And someone who will know if we're imitating or mimicking them. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And what we can see is this is kind of the birthplace for rivalry, comparison, and competition.
Of course.
Okay. Yep.
I just have like all these like movies like Mean Girls and all that just flashing into my. This all feels so teenage, but also so every.
Well, it's like you see groups of teenage friends walking around, guys and girls, and they're all dressed exactly the same. Like there's 4 or 5 of them, and they're literally like slight differences, but essentially like, big white T-shirt, baggy jeans, same shoes. And it's like, don't they all find that weird that they're all dressed exactly the same?
I mean, it's like my pants today. I'm wearing them because you wear them.
Well, everyone wears those pants though. It's not a me thing.
I rarely wear them, and every time you wear them, I just think, God, I want to look like that. And this morning was my breaking point. I was like, I can't not do this anymore.
Shit, I'm the new Chris Judd.
That's pretty cool.
So what we can see happening there is that, for example, in your social group, there might be someone that you might imitate. Like maybe you buy something that they've worn before, like that looks really cool, so you wear that. So the pants is an example. Or maybe it's that they start playing tennis, and so you're like, oh, that sounds like a good idea, I'll start playing tennis. And then what happens is that maybe, like using the tennis as an example, maybe when you start playing tennis, maybe you're getting a bit better than the person that originally started playing tennis. And so then we get this kind of rivalry that starts to happen based upon the model of desire being the outcome of the tennis game. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. And so we start to get, and this is kind of the emergence too of things like frenemies. Or like the arch nemesis that you might have in your life. So a frenemy or an arch nemesis is usually someone that is very similar to you. So it might be someone that even like has a similar goal to your aspiration. So maybe it's that you want this same job, or maybe it's that you want the same, I don't know, partner, this same object of desire. And so that creates this kind of competition.
What is that annoyance when someone else starts doing something the same as you?
Yeah.
What is that? Why do we get so annoyed about that?
So that's kind of competition, basically.
But if there's no because we're worried that they're gonna like do it
Get
better.
Yeah, get better than you.
Or take that identity or something.
Mm-hmm. So it's like this one-upmanship almost, this kind of constant, like it starts off with this idea of like keeping up with the Joneses. I must keep up with them. And then once I've kept up with them, then we get this rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if have you ever thought if you're someone's arch nemesis?
Oh,
I've never even considered that
Like,
to be a possibility.
If I've like consciously or unconsciously essentially mimetic someone.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're like, that Ryan, he's my arch nemesis.
Yeah, I wonder.
Wow. Never considered that before.
Neither.
Yeah.
But often like a nemesis or a frenemy is someone, again, that is very similar to you, has similar interests, similar desires, and is going for a similar goal.
Yeah. Well, okay. So people may not know this about me, but I run a lot. I race a lot. And we like in March, I had the National Masters. And so it's men in between the age of 41 and 44 who spend their entire life training for a 400 meters race. And there was like 8 of us. And before the race, it was very tense and like no one was talking. And it was like, and I was like, these guys are my enemies. And after the race, it was a very hot day. So you had to sit under the tent to get shade. So we're all under the tent, we're all talking. And we all go down like a house on fire. I was like, of course we do. We're all like between the age of 41 and 43. And we all have the same obsession. And we're all talking about how grateful we were for our partners who let us pursue this. And we're all talking lovingly about our wives going, yeah, I mean, we're away for 3 days to run one lap of an ass track. Like, and we all had all the same struggles and all the same, we got on so well. But just before the race, before we were talking, we were like, yeah, we're not frenemies, just enemies.
Yeah.
We're exactly the same. We're the same people, just with different coloured
pursuing the
pants
same
on.
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've like if we, again, like when we're zooming out here, we can also see like how this might show up in terms of sibling rivalry. So like, you know, Bronte obviously explaining, you know, what that meant in terms of her relationship with her sister, because they were both ostensibly the same object of desire was the swimming, right? Well, then at some point too, there is this kind of questioning which she experienced. And obviously, Josh, you've experienced that same thing too, of like, there's a point at which you start to question, actually, what is this model of desire? And is this actually a model that I want to continue to pursue?
Yeah. Well, the thing I was going to say before is that it's really not that much of a surprise that siblings would have a similar skill set and similar interests, considering that they have similar genetics and a similar upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
So it would explain why it's so common.
Could it happen? Does it also work in terms of, of course, mimetic desire can be something that you desire something because someone else, like if a sibling desires it as well. Is it the same thing if you're mimicking a sibling's bad behavior because they're getting attention, or they, you know, if like the older sibling is like behaving badly or starts like acting up at school or whatever, and the parents become so focused on this kid, and the other kid, the younger sibling, feels like they're not getting as much attention. Is it the same thing if they then start acting up as well to get attention? Is that it's not desire, I guess, but it's like.
So I mean, that's a really big thing to unpack, because there's obviously so much going on in terms of family, and I don't want to minimize it just to it. Like every issue is just about mimetic desire, because it's certainly not. But we can see that there are both negative and positive models of desire. So, and I think this is an important thing too, in like kind of zooming out or kind of coming to a place of pause, is checking in and seeing who are my models of desire, and are they a negative influence or are they a positive influence?
Yeah.
And so we might be emulating or wanting or valuing something that may actually bring us some harm or move us further away from kind of the sense of value direction that we have in our life.
Yeah.
So I have found myself in the last maybe year or two, and I haven't said this out loud before, so I hope I articulate it well, but being frustrated or resenting people that I used to look up to.
Mm.
Like, why did I spend so many years trying to be like that person when I'm a bit older now and see not necessarily a bad person, but just like someone that I was like, why on earth did I waste time wanting to be that or wanting the same things they did? And I genuinely resented people I used to like a lot. Is that a thing that would?
Yeah, well, there's a change there of your desire, right? But I'm also curious around like, do you remember what it was that, because it sounds like you felt disappointed by something.
Well, I heard Chris Judd say on the radio, we might cut this out, but he said, he was talking about money and he said, and he was probably joking, but he said, well, money doesn't necessarily make you happy, but it stops you being sad. And all the football guys went, oh, that's amazing. That's so funny. That's so clever. And I was like, that's horseshit. I was like, whoa, I need to calm down. Why is that really triggering me?
Mm-hmm.
And I've met Chris and he's a lovely guy. He's so unbelievably nice. But I got really angry at that comment. And I was like, why am I so angry at this? And I was like, well, I spent a lot of time
Trying to be like him.
trying to have his body at least.
I feel like I can imagine, who knows? I mean, Chris Judd's obviously a lot more comfortable in that environment than I would be in that environment. But I can imagine myself saying something weird like that doesn't represent what I believe. But in that environment, I can imagine myself sort of, I don't know, trying to like impress the other guys by doing a joke like that.
There's so many examples like that whole football commentary group of like blokey blokes. I even sort of talked like them for a bit and like obsessed over football a bit. And now a bit older, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like it just doesn't matter. And I'm annoyed at myself and them for believing that.
Uh-huh.
Or even like for way too long, I cared too much about my cricket team. Like us doing well was the only thing in the world that mattered. And I'm so annoyed at people who I looked up to who led me to believe that, which is so unfair on them.
So they may at that time have been like your models of desire.
Yeah.
So they were kind of really showing you what you should want.
Yeah.
And then at some point in time, you've kind of paused and reflected upon, actually, is this the direction I want to be heading in? And so, with that
I never questioned it. Like a lot of people, I never questioned. I was like, yep, no, being good at cricket at this club and doing this well that's everything. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
Never stopped and went, no, it's actually if I just have fun, that's what actually matters. If I'm enjoying playing cricket, that's what matters.
No, but at some point in time you did reflect because you had this experience of disappointment or this experience of like anger or whatever it might be. There has been a pausing, that there has been like an opening up of your view on that particular goal or aspiration, right? And I guess this is what ultimately we want to get to, is that when we uncover that our desires are not unique and original to us, that they're informed by other people or other things or institutions, when we can kind of uncover that does give us an opportunity really to reflect on the direction I do want to head in, as in, is this unconscious process of being informed by what other people are desiring and valuing. If we pause, maybe we can actually actively choose other models to imitate or other models to follow and pursue. So there's the agency comes in that. And so, yes, maybe in your 20s we kind of, blindly follow these models because people tell us we should want them. But over time, maybe there's opportunity to reflect and to pause and to say, okay, who are these models in my life? And how happy do I feel about following these people? Like, this is just a very simple kind of trivial example. On social media, who do you follow? So do you actively choose to follow the people that are heading you in a direction which is in accordance with your values? Or do you find maybe you follow someone that, that might have like materialistic views, and you find yourself being drawn into wanting or needing a particular thing? So what I'm saying here is that, at some point in time, can we pause and review almost who are my models and how am I choosing them?
Oh, that is because then what you're saying is like you review them and then go like, am I happy with how I'm being influenced here?
Yeah.
And if you're not, then to sort of try and find new models to, whether it be on that in that example, new people to follow on Instagram, or even the type of television that we're watching every night. I guess that would, but so then is the opposite of mimetic desire authentic desire?
I don't actually know the answer to that. I think I imagine it would be, or there might be there
Wait,
must
is
be
there an
another.
opposite?
I don't know that.
Instinctive
Yeah,
desire.
and I think that's the problem is that it's an oxymoron.
Right.
So
yeah,
you
okay.
can't have
yeah.
an instinctual desire.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't.
No, and that's kind of the main principle of this is that there is nothing that is instinctual about our desires.
That's
It's
devastating.
all influence and come from
Some
something we've seen,
other place,
experienced,
and I mean this can. I mean it sound like again like this can kind of sound a bit full on, but it can even be something like when we think about creativity, even in the backs of our mind, in the back kind of parts of history, we will be informed by, for example, the classics. Or we will be informed by like really historic writings in some capacity.
In some way, yeah. And I guess then, and a friend of mine who's an artist, he said this. He said all he's doing is I forget how he worded it, but it was something like, I'm riffing on my heroes.
Mm.
So it's like, he's looking at like the heroes from like even centuries past, looking at their work and being like, oh, and just like reading books about them and then thinking about, okay, consciously, what's my take on what they did? And that's probably what most of us do unconsciously. He does it in a conscious way. But I think that's sort of like the closest we can get to originality.
That's exactly it. And that's such a nice phrase too, riffing on my heroes. I mean, it brings to light the fact that there are these models in my life that I'm wanting to aspire to or admiring. And from their work, I'm creating my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, it's really good.
But you might have, like, definitely for me, you probably have to go all in on your heroes first to kind of like go down the path of like, okay, I'm literally just trying to be Sean McAuliffe now. And I think no one can notice, but now I think about it, everyone can notice. Everyone can tell. But then over time you keep doing it, you find confidence and you find your own version of that. And what you become is like you leave behind the kind of complete mimicry and you create something which is wholly yours in some way, because it's a bit of that, it's a bit of that, it's a bit of him, bit of her, bit of Monty Python, whatever. And it's just like this mishmash and it just becomes your own little mixtape of creativity or something.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. I think you can, just because you're mimicking other people in your desires, I don't think that forbids the chance of an original idea spawning out of that process, because no one else has your specific combination of all those desires.
I think it's probably because I value originality so much. The thought that it is impossible to be truly original is disappointing.
Yeah, because I feel like what we're talking about isn't necessarily desire but outcome.
But I think...
I don't know. It's the desire to be seen in a certain way, I think, which is not necessarily a good thing either. But I talking about myself, it's like, yeah, it's the desire to be considered an original, creative person, because the people that I admire, I see as wholly original. But having said that, Monty Python people,
but they're not either.
They're not either.
Yeah.
They'll say themselves that it's like the Goon Show was like, so yeah. So I guess it's interesting. Yeah.
The thing I wanted to ask was about in what aspect does this interact with your values? Because for me, it didn't feel like it at the time, but looking back in hindsight at the times that I sort of switched paths and it was like, I don't know if that's necessarily the person I want to be anymore. And feels like every time I did that, it was sort of anchoring my values of the kind of person I wanted to be.
Yeah. And I think that feels really important from a therapeutic point of view too. And like coming from the kind of approach that I like to use is this possibility of really kind of stepping back and having a look at really what is really true to my heart? What are these values? What is the direction I want to head in? And yes, from this, from the theory of mimetic desire, even those values will be informed by models, but that's okay. And so it doesn't have to be that we come up with original values either. I mean, like as we know, there will be a shared experience in certain values, but it's about you uncovering what is specific to me. So what are the values that are really important to me, and how is my behavior lining up with that? So if I'm emulating or being really influenced by a model of desire who is actually contrary to my values, that's going to bring up some real difficulty.
Yeah.
Or like a gap between basically where you are and where you want to be in your life.
And I guess that would be the scary part as a parent. If your child, you can see your child starting to mimic problematic people.
Oh, look, I think it's really tricky. And obviously adolescence is a period of time where in some ways the main intention or developmental milestone for adolescence is kind of identity formation. And we are so primed to seek acceptance and to understand who we are on the basis of all the people around us in adolescence. And so the models of desire will be everywhere, really. But what we will see, and like this shows up so easily in high school, is that there often is a very clear kind of hierarchy almost in school of who it is that we should be valuing, what it is that person espouses that we want to follow. So it's really easy to see how that happens in high school. But that may be really difficult for a parent to see because it may be really contrary to a parent's values or what the hopes that they hold for their children.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But so sometimes an exercise which can be helpful is even just to take stock of like your top 5 models of desire. And so they can be like a friend, like friends can obviously be, your models of desire. They can be mentors. They could be institutions or a career path choice. They can be, I don't know, maybe they could even be children. I don't know. But I think it's a really kind of useful exercise to be able to pause and really have a look at who is influencing me and how happy am I about that?
Yeah.
Would it be dangerous, not even necessarily dangerous, but cautionary to be one of your mimetic desires to be a character on a TV show or in a film or even someone on a reality TV show who's supposedly a real person, who is a real person but is highly edited and manipulated? Like my instinct would be like you could very easily be influenced heavily by someone you love on a TV show, but in reality that's not who they truly are.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to emulate something that is impossible.
Yep. And that's the thing, like on social media, we never get the whole person.
Yeah.
So you're only seeing a portion of that person or what they're portraying. But what they're portraying is a lifestyle or a particular way of living. And so we're aspiring to that because they want it. Like an example that comes to mind, and maybe this is a bit too old, but Michael Jordan.
Go on.
Yes. I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen the most recent movie, Air. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Yeah. And in that, we're looking at this idea that what people are valuing was not the shoe, but the fact he was wearing it. Okay. So it's not the material possession that we were valuing, but him as a person. So he became the model of desire, and whatever he picked up, like for example, his shoes, Gatorade, whatever it was that he was sponsored by.
His T-shirts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we wear those or we buy those things to be more like him.
Be like Mike.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be like Mike. Yeah. And so I want to be like him because he's showing me what I should value. But the minute he doesn't like those things anymore, if he disregards the shoes, we stop liking the shoes.
So that's the power of the endorsement. The celebrity endorsement. Yeah.
So it's actually not the thing. It's the idea that when I put those shoes on, I am more like my hero.
Yeah. I mean, at what point are we going to start seeing celebrities at the top of the Google reviews list on, like, if you look at a restaurant and, if you like go to a restaurant to see what the star rating is and be like, oh yeah, Jeanette said 4 stars. Okay. Yeah, she said some good stuff. But it's like, oh, Michael Jordan went. Michael Jordan gave it 5 stars. He had the steak. Maybe we'll go there. Like, I mean, that.
Well, that happened to the cafe around the corner from us, the cafe that we go to, Chibi.
Oh, yeah.
Harry Styles went there. It was in the paper.
Yeah.
And we go there all the time. like,
Way before Harry was going there.
and
For the record.
Yeah, just so everyone knows.
and he went there on I don't know, it was in the paper that he went there on a Saturday. Monday, we couldn't get a seat. It's never happened before.
Yeah,
I was like,
right.
oh,
It was Friday breakfast.
Friday breakfast. There you go.
Mm.
We couldn't get a
specific.
seat
Yeah.
because he'd been there 2 days before, and everyone wanted to just go because he was going.
Yep.
Yep.
Really annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
now we're
Bloody
doing the
Mimetic.
same thing.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Ruining it for ourselves.
But there is this thing about like really pausing and checking in, like with how consistent is this desire with the way I do want to live my life.
Mm.
Like another really easy example is, like there may have been a period of time when you were renting and maybe all of your friends were renting too. And there was this sense of like, oh yeah, this is good. And then slowly people start to buy. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
like I should be buying because
Yeah.
everybody else is buying. Does that make sense?
Exactly that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Same with getting married, I reckon, for
Mm.
people in there. Well, all ages, but
Having children.
yeah.
Mm.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
remember when, I don't know, I'm so bad with money, so this could be wrong, but I remember at the time people saying like, well, there's also an argument that if you don't buy and you rent and you save, you can actually make it just as financially viable just to continue to rent and all this stuff. And in my head, I was like, I'm not brave enough to follow that model because I don't know anyone that's done it,
Mm.
and I don't look up to anyone that's
Exactly.
done it. So I was like, but I look up to a lot of people
Mm.
that have bought houses, so I'm going to go with that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So again, they're your models of desire.
Yeah.
The people to
Yeah.
emulate.
That's
Mm.
actually like that you say that, and I won't go on about this because I've certainly spoken enough about to have or to not to have children. But the one of the reasons why it's such a tricky decision to if you were to choose not to is it feels like you're going against the grain in a
Mhm.
massive way.
There are nowhere near as many
Models of
models.
No,
Yeah.
and it's and that is what actually Jam and I are desperately trying to find is models, like exactly what I was saying before, like models where I was like, oh, they've done it.
Mhm.
Like Jam was like on the internet, she's like, Sarah Silverman doesn't have kids, and then we're like listening to like bits from Sarah Silverman about not having. She was like, oh, great, yeah. Trying to find.
So there's like a
Funny.
seeking of validation in my choices, in my
Yes.
desires, that they are okay.
So
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's again like a very like acknowledging that it happens to all of us. Everyone does it, and I think for me it's like we'll just be aware of who your models are.
But I also imagine that it's not just the model itself, it's your interaction with the model. So it could be, I feel like something could begin as a healthy model, but then you become obsessive about it.
Mm.
And your interaction with that supposedly healthy
Mm.
thing becomes unhealthy.
That's
Mm.
yeah, spot on. Absolutely.
So checking
Yeah.
your obsession.
Yeah, check your
Yeah,
obsessions.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a really broad concept, and it's obviously not one that we really kind of bring into therapy. Like this is not a therapeutic or clinical approach. This is really kind of an opportunity to think really kind of more broadly, I suppose, about where our desires come from and how helpful is it for me to keep following unconsciously. So this is an opportunity, just again, like I said, just to pause, to have a reflection upon who is it that I admire, and why is it that I admire them, and do I want to continue to admire them, or
So good.
are there alternatives that I might want to cultivate more interest in?
I don't know where this fits into the picture, but I'm sure, I don't know if I've met many people in my life like this, and I assume everyone has, and I think it sums up maybe Pitchfork magazine 100%. But people who are in love with a band that no one's heard of, and they're like really a spot, and then as soon as that band blows up and becomes famous, they hate them.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I do that with so many things.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as it becomes like a very popular thing, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, I don't want to be in that group anymore. I don't want to be in the popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if it's linked into this concept somehow of like feeling like maybe that is a desire that's just mine as opposed to copied, and then I don't know, it's like a reverse engineering of it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or it's completely irrelevant and we'll cut it out.
I remember when I became like, got into my late 20s and 30s, and I remember the moment where it was not finally, but it was okay to say that I liked Pearl Jam, because like I liked Pearl Jam so much as a teenager, and then it got to a point where it was a bit daggy to like Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
And then, your music preferences are so, it feels so important to what you should and shouldn't like. And then I remember the point where someone was like, oh, I love Pearl Jam. And I was like, so do I. Why am I not listening to them? I love them. But but I'd stopped because it was like uncool to like them for a while.
Yeah. And so in that period of time where it was uncool, perhaps the people that you were like concerned about their acceptance, they were your models there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so true.
What a fitting day to have this episode on. In 2009, I was sitting in the cricket changing rooms at Melbourne University, and a friend of ours walked in before the game, Tom Williams, his name is, and he was wearing skinny jeans, and I'd never seen anyone wear them before. I nearly fell off my chair. It was like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. 3 months later, I was wearing skinny jeans, and I have ever since.
Yes.
And today is the first day, I reckon, since then, where I haven't been wearing a skinny fitting pant.
Oh.
And it's, Ryan, I think you've become a model of my desire. No, not that. That's not the wording. No, you become a...
Sorry, Tom, you're no longer his model of desire.
Can we clip that up?
You've become a model for me, because I was like, I bought those pants when I was in New Zealand, which was 6 months ago now. And every time I put them on in the morning, I'm like, no, they're just not slim enough. I can't wear these.
Yeah.
And then like, you've been wearing this colour pant, a bit looser fitting for a long time. And I'm like, Ryan does it, I'm doing it.
Yeah, and I only do it because I've seen other people do it.
Yeah. So then like the question is like, who's the first mover?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really difficult, like obviously as we've alluded
They're awesome,
to.
whoever they are.
Yeah, exactly. But they're like, it's almost,
Tom Williams.
it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's really impossible to chase that back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because their movement might come from not so much the item itself, but by doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing.
Well, there's I forget his name. Oh, Rick Owens, I think. The fashion designer, Rick Owens. I think it's him. Is it long black hair? Is that Rick Owens?
And all black.
All
At
black.
the moment, all black clothes.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a...
So there's a video. I'll try and find it, and if I can, I'll put it in the show notes. But there's a video about him and his in his studio where have you seen this, Josh?
Yeah, in his travertine castle.
Yes. Yeah. And he's in this like in Italy, I think somewhere in this sort of small town, and on one side of the street is his like very minimal Gothic house that is like very much in his style, and then on the other side is his studio, and he kind of goes between the both. And he consciously doesn't read anything, watch anything, or doesn't expose himself to the outside world at all while he's creating, because he doesn't want to be influenced by anything. He wants all the ideas to be purely, and they probably aren't, like of course they'll be influenced in some way, but
minimizing that.
Minimizing the influence. So it's like truly his own thoughts.
Oh, that's fascinating.
That's so good, Em.
Well, I mean, it's just a bit of it's a opportunity, I guess, just to reflect upon, the fact that what I actually want and what I actually desire is not a gut instinct.
Oh, it's so interesting.
And so again, like this opportunity to really check in with how is it I want to show off in my life? How is it that I want to, like what direction it is that I want to head in, I suppose.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you, Em.
It's amazing. An episode I learned so much from you, and I also learned from you, Ryan, today that Meryl Streep's name is actually Meryl Streep and not Meryl Street.
What?
So I've learned heaps today.
Oh my God.
So thank you, everyone, for educating me. And
Meryl Street.
I've always thought that was
This whole
her name.
time.
My entire life is Meryl Street.
Unreal.
Amazing.
God, you are incredible. Thank you, Em.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.